I'm so grateful you joined tonight. Your nervous system knows something the busy world doesn't. That peace lives in the quiet spaces, not the crowded ones. Tonight, you'll discover why your brain craves home, why solitude isn't loneliness. And by the end, you'll understand that staying home isn't hiding. It's where you've been yourself all along. Welcome to Psychology Facts to Fall Asleep, to wherever you are right now. Perhaps tucked into your favorite corner of your room, feeling that familiar relief of being exactly where you want to be. Allow yourself to sink deeper into this moment. We'll journey through 100 psychology facts about people who love staying home. From the neuroscience of why crowds drain you, to the evolutionary purpose of quiet souls, to the moment you finally stop apologizing for needing what you've always needed. This gentle exploration builds a sanctuary for minds that think differently. If this resonates with your quiet heart, a soft like or subscribe helps other homebodies discover this peaceful space too. It creates a pathway for more deep, quiet souls to find their way here, one sleepy listener at a time. Your presence here means everything. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your shoulders drop away from your ears, your jaw unclench, your breathing naturally deepen. You don't need to remember any of this. Just notice that soothing heaviness beginning to spread through your limbs, like your body finally receiving permission to stop performing. Thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're exactly where you belong, in your sanctuary, your chosen space, the one place where the world's demands fade away. Feel the walls around you not as barriers, but as gentle arms holding you safe. Let your mind settle like dust after movement, everything finding its natural resting place. And now we begin. If you've always preferred staying home to going out, you're part of a quiet majority that research is only beginning to understand. Recent studies show that between 30 and 50% of adults consistently prefer solitary activities and home environments over social gatherings. This isn't temporary. It's a stable temperament trait that remains consistent across decades. Researchers tracking thousands of participants found that people who loved staying home at 25 still cherish it at 65. What changes isn't the preference itself, but whether they feel guilty about it. And that guilt, it turns out, has nothing to do with the preference being wrong. It has everything to do with living in a culture that misunderstands what it means. There's a specific relief that washes over you when plans get cancelled. A physical sensation of tension releasing from your shoulders. Breath deepening. A quiet joy bubbling up. Research on stress responses shows that stress hormones can begin rising in introverts hours or even a day before planned social events, creating anticipatory tension their bodies carry silently. When the event is cancelled, these hormones don't just return to baseline. They drop below it, creating a temporary state of enhanced calm and well-being. Your body has been trying to tell you something all along. The relief isn't laziness or antisocial behavior. It's your nervous system celebrating the return to its optimal state. The modern understanding of introversion has evolved far beyond Carl Jung's original 1921 definitions. Today's personality neuroscience, particularly recent research on temperament, reveals that introversion exists on a spectrum shaped by at least 12 different genetic variations affecting neurotransmitter systems. It's not simply about being shy or preferring solitude. It's about how your brain processes dopamine, acetylcholine, and other chemical messengers that determine where you find reward. Some brains find reward in novelty, stimulation, and social interaction. Others find it in reflection, depth, and familiar environments. Neither is superior. They're simply different operating systems, both essential to human survival and flourishing. You're not a broken extrovert. You're a beautifully functioning introvert. Dr. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people shows that approximately 20% of the population possesses a nervous system that processes sensory information more deeply. Brain scans reveal increased activation in areas associated with awareness, empathy, and subtle environmental details. If you're someone who notices the hum of fluorescent lights, feels overwhelmed in shopping malls, or needs significant recovery time after social events, your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, processing the world at a level of depth that others don't access. This isn't oversensitivity. It's a survival trait that evolution has maintained because communities need members who notice what others miss, who feel what others overlook, who process deeply before acting. The preference for staying home isn't something you chose, any more than you chose your eye color. Twin studies demonstrate that temperament, including the preference for solitude versus social interaction, is approximately 40 to 60% heritable. By analyzing brain activity in identical twins raised in different environments, researchers found remarkably similar patterns of response to social stimulation, suggesting that your comfort level with solitude is partially written into your genetic code. The remaining 40 to 60% comes from early childhood experiences and learned coping strategies. But the foundation, the baseline tendency to recharge alone rather than with others, appears to be something you were born carrying. You didn't fail to become outgoing. You succeeded at being yourself. Western culture, particularly American culture, has held what psychologist Dr. Susan Cain calls the extrovert ideal for roughly the past century. Her research traces this bias to the early 20th century shift from a culture of character to a culture of personality. When success became associated with salesmanship, charisma, and the ability to influence others in brief encounters. Before this shift, solitary virtues like contemplation, integrity, and deep expertise were highly valued. But as America industrialized and urbanized, the ability to make a strong impression on strangers became economically valuable. Schools began rewarding children for participation over reflection. Workplaces started equating leadership with extroversion. And quietly, insidiously, millions of introverts internalized the message that their natural temperament was something to overcome rather than something to honor. The cost of pretending to be extroverted when you're not has been measured. Research synthesizing data from dozens of studies found that introverts who engage in sustained personality masking, forcing themselves to behave in extroverted ways for extended periods, experience deeper exhaustion, persistent worry, low mood, and even physical symptoms their bodies can't ignore. The effort of maintaining a false persona depletes cognitive resources needed for actual work, drains emotional reserves required for genuine relationships, and creates chronic stress that never fully resolves. This kind of sustained acting out of character can reduce well-being as much as chronic physical pain. Every hour you spend pretending to be someone you're not is an hour your nervous system spends in a state of subtle emergency. There was likely a moment in childhood when you first noticed you were different. Maybe it was during recess, When you gravitated toward the edge of the playground instead of the center, maybe it was at a birthday party, when you felt exhausted while everyone else seemed energized. Or maybe it was simply the dawning realization that what others called fun, loud games, crowded rooms, constant interaction, left you feeling hollowed out and desperate for silence. Longitudinal research following children from infancy through adulthood identified these early moments of self-recognition as crucial to forming either healthy self-acceptance or chronic shame. Children who received the message "you're fine as you are" developed into adults comfortable with their temperament. Children who received the message "you should be more outgoing" often spent decades trying to fix something that was never broken. Even in infancy, the signs were there. Studies on infant temperament showed that 20% of 4-month-old babies display what researchers called high reactive temperament. They startle more easily, cry more readily in response to new stimuli, and show greater physiological arousal to change. Follow-up studies tracking these babies into adulthood found that the majority became introverted adults who preferred familiar environments and needed substantial alone time. But here's what matters. These children, when raised by parents who respected their sensitivity rather than trying to toughen them up, developed into emotionally healthy adults with strong relationships and successful careers. Their temperament wasn't a problem to solve. It was a blueprint to honor. You are always this way, and you are always supposed to be. So if you've always loved staying home, felt drained by prolonged social interaction, or needed significant recovery time after being around people, you're not strange, antisocial, or broken. You're part of a vast, quiet population, numbering in the hundreds of millions globally, living according to different neurological wiring. Recent estimates suggest that between 1/3 and 1/2 of humanity falls somewhere on the introverted end of the temperament spectrum. You're not a minority that needs to adapt to the extroverted majority. You're half of the equation, essential and irreplaceable, living proof that human evolution required both types to survive. And you can stop explaining yourself now. You never needed to. Your brain operates on a different chemical reward system than extroverts, and this difference is measurable. Brain imaging research reveals that introverts and extroverts literally use different neural pathways. When processing rewards and making decisions, extroverts show greater activity in the dopamine system, the neurotransmitter associated with seeking novelty, risk, and external stimulation. Introverts, by contrast, show greater activity in acetylcholine pathways, a neurotransmitter linked to reflection, long-term planning, and internally focused attention. Dopamine says go out and get it. Acetylcholine says stay here and think about it. Neither is better. They're complementary strategies that evolution maintained because groups need both explorers and evaluators, both doers and thinkers. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's optimized for a different kind of excellence. The concept of baseline arousal explains why you might feel overwhelmed in situations that others find merely stimulating. Research demonstrates that introverts have chronically higher baseline levels of internal alertness, meaning their systems are already more awake and responsive even in quiet environments. Imagine a volume dial that's set higher from birth. What registers as pleasantly engaging to an extrovert's brain? A bustling party, lively conversation, background music can quickly push an introvert's brain past optimal stimulation into uncomfortable overwhelm. It's not that you can't handle these environments. It's that they cost you more neurologically. After an hour in a loud restaurant, an extrovert might feel energized and ready for more. After the same hour, you've already burned through your reserves and need silence to reset. The genetic research gets even more specific. Research on the DRD4 gene, which affects dopamine receptors in the brain, shows that certain variations correlate with novelty-seeking versus familiarity preference. One biological thread in the complex tapestry of temperament. People with variations that create lower dopamine requirements often prefer staying home, reading quietly, engaging in solitary hobbies. Other variations create higher dopamine needs, leading to individuals who thrive in crowds and seek constant novelty. You can't choose your genetic expression any more than you can choose your blood type. This preference isn't a lifestyle choice you're making. It's a biological reality you're living. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, functions differently in introverts. Research using functional brain scans found that introverts show greater amygdala activation in response to unfamiliar faces, novel social situations, and unexpected interactions. The amygdala is responsible for detecting potential threats and triggering the body's protective responses. In introverts, this system appears calibrated to be more cautious, more alert to potential social danger. This isn't paranoia or social anxiety. It's a protective mechanism that served an evolutionary purpose. While extroverts in ancestral environments rushed forward to meet strangers and explore new territories, introverts hung back, assessed risks, noticed details others missed. Both strategies kept the tribe alive. Your caution isn't cowardice. It's a survival trait your ancestors needed and your genes preserved. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for complex thinking and decision-making, shows distinct differences in introverts versus extroverts. Research reveals that introverts demonstrate more activity in the prefrontal regions associated with internal dialogue, planning, and abstract thinking. When asked to make decisions, introverts' brains light up in areas related to deep processing and consideration of multiple possibilities. This creates what feels like overthinking, but is actually thorough thinking. Your brain running detailed simulations before acting. Extroverts show more activity in areas associated with rapid processing and immediate response. Neither approach is superior in all contexts. Quick decisions serve us in emergencies. Careful deliberation serves us in complex situations. Your tendency to think things through isn't indecisiveness. It's your brain refusing to shortcut the process of actually understanding something before acting on it. The energy drain you feel after social interaction has been measured and validated. Using careful measurement of stress hormones over weeks of observation, research demonstrated that introverts experience measurable increases in their body's stress response during extended social interaction, even when the interaction is pleasant. The conversations you enjoy still cost you energy in ways they don't cost extroverts. Brain imaging during studies showed sustained activation in regions associated with effortful control, meaning your brain is working harder to process social cues, manage your presentation, and maintain appropriate responses. It's like running a complex program in the background that you're not consciously aware of but that steadily drains your battery. After extended conversation, an extrovert's stress hormones often remain steady or drop. For many introverts, they climb gradually, a cost you may not consciously notice until exhaustion hits. sensory processing sensitivity, often overlapping with introversion, means your nervous system has a lower threshold for overstimulation. Research shows that highly sensitive individuals display stronger activation in brain regions involved in awareness, action planning, and especially empathy when exposed to subtle environmental stimuli. You notice the scratchy tag in your shirt, the flickering of slightly faulty lighting, the tension in someone's voice that others miss entirely. This isn't being difficult or high maintenance. Your nervous system is processing information at a resolution others don't access. You're receiving more data per second of experience than less sensitive nervous systems. And all that data requires processing power. By the end of a normal day in the world, your brain has processed what might take someone else a week to notice. No wonder you need quiet to recover. The auditory system, the part of your brain that processes sound, may function differently in people who prefer solitude. Research on the nervous system suggests that some people are more attuned to detecting potential stress in acoustic environments, background noise that others tune out, office chatter, traffic, music in stores, might register in your brain as requiring constant monitoring, never fully fading into the background. This creates what researchers call effortful listening, where your brain can't fully relax into passive auditory processing. In silence, or with predictable, chosen sounds, your nervous system can finally stop scanning. This is why noise-cancelling headphones feel like a blessing, and why the quiet of your home can bring such profound relief. You're not being antisocial. You're finally allowing your auditory system to rest. Overstimulation creates a cascade of responses that introverts experience more intensely. When your nervous system detects too much input, too many people, too much noise, too much unpredictability, it triggers alarm responses. First, stress hormones flood your system. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallower. Your muscles tense. Then, if the overstimulation continues, you enter what researchers call introvert hangover, a state of depletion where you feel irritable, scattered, and desperate to withdraw. Research on this phenomenon found that introverts require an average of 2 to 3 hours of solitude to fully recover from a single hour of intense social interaction. The recovery isn't optional self-care. It's biological necessity, as essential as sleep or food. When you need to go home and be alone, you're not being rude. You're responding to genuine physical depletion. The recovery time you require isn't a sign of weakness. It's a feature of how your particular nervous system maintains equilibrium. Research on restoration shows that highly sensitive introverts require approximately 50% more downtime between stimulating activities than less sensitive individuals to return to baseline functioning. This doesn't mean you have less stamina. It means you're processing more information during the activity, which requires more recovery time afterward. An athlete who sprints 100 meters needs more recovery time than one who walks it. Not because they're weaker, but because they expended more energy. You're sprinting neurologically through experiences that others are walking through. The rest you need is proportional to the depth at which you're processing life. Your need for recovery time is evidence of engagement, not avoidance. The default mode network, a system of brain regions active during rest and internal reflection, shows greater activity in introverts. Research demonstrates that when introverts are alone and not focused on a specific task, their brains don't power down. They power up in different regions. The default mode network, associated with autobiographical memory, imagination, and future planning, becomes more active. This is where creative thinking happens, where complex problems get solved, where you integrate experiences into understanding. Extroverts show less activity in this network, requiring external stimulation to feel engaged. Your alone time isn't wasted time. It's when your brain is doing some of its most valuable work, connecting dots, generating insights, creating meaning from experience. The hours you spend alone are as productive as any hours spent in action, just productive in invisible ways. Mirror neurons, brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing it, may be more active in introverts and highly sensitive people. Research suggests that heightened mirror neuron activity means you literally feel others' emotions more intensely. When someone near you is anxious, your brain doesn't just observe their anxiety. It simulates it, creating a mild version of the feeling in your own body. Spend an hour with an anxious person, and you absorb some of that anxiety. Spend a day in a crowd of diverse emotional states, and you're unconsciously processing and partially experiencing dozens of feelings that aren't even yours. No wonder crowds exhaust you. You're not just navigating your own emotional state. You're navigating everyone else's too. Your need to be alone isn't coldness. It's the desperate need to finally feel only your own feelings for a while. Decision fatigue hits introverts harder in social contexts. Research on mental energy shows that making decisions drains a limited resource, and introverts appear to spend more of this energy on social decisions than extroverts do. Every conversation requires countless small decisions: when to speak, what to say, how to say it, whether to agree or disagree, when to laugh, how long to maintain eye contact. Extroverts make these decisions quickly and automatically. Introverts tend to deliberate more, weighing options, considering implications. By the end of a party, an extrovert might feel energized and ready for more. You've made countless small decisions: when to speak, how to respond, where to look, each one quietly draining your mental reserves. This is why you sometimes feel paralyzed by simple questions after social events. You've used up your decision-making energy on the social interaction itself. Circadian rhythm research reveals an interesting correlation between introversion and chronotype, your natural sleep-wake cycle. Research studying tens of thousands of participants found that introverts are statistically more likely to be evening types, with peak energy and cognitive performance later in the day. Extroverts tend toward morning preference. While the exact mechanism isn't fully understood, researchers theorize it relates to when different personality types historically performed their optimal roles. Extroverts, active in social coordination during daylight hours. Introverts, processing and reflecting during quieter evening and night hours. If you've always felt more alive at night, when the world quiets down and social demands fade, you're not being contrary. You're aligning with your biological clock, which seems calibrated for solitude and reflection during hours when the external world makes fewer demands on your attention. After exploring all these mechanisms, the dopamine pathways, the amygdala responses, the sensory processing differences, the mirror neurons, the energy expenditure, one truth becomes clear. Your brain structure isn't designed for constant social engagement, any more than a deep-sea creature is designed for shallow water. You're not a defective extrovert who needs fixing. You're a perfectly calibrated introvert whose nervous system is designed for depth rather than breadth, for reflection rather than reaction, for internal richness rather than external stimulation. Every system in your brain, from neurotransmitter balance to regional activation patterns, is optimized for exactly the kind of life you're drawn to. The life where home feels like sanctuary, where solitude feels like nourishment, where quiet feels like coming home to yourself. This isn't something to overcome. This is something to honor as the biological truth of who you've always been. Take a slow, deep breath and notice where you are right now. Feel the surface beneath you, supporting your weight without effort. Notice the walls around you. They're not caging you in. They're creating a boundary between you and the demanding world. Imagine those walls as gentle guardians, keeping chaos at bay, holding space for your nervous system to finally rest. With each breath, feel yourself settling deeper into this protected space. Your sanctuary isn't a prison. It's a garden where your truest self can finally grow without being trampled. Rest here. You're safe. You're home. And now we continue. Home functions as more than shelter. It operates psychologically as what attachment theorists call a secure base. Original attachment theory, expanded by contemporary research, demonstrates that adults maintain attachment bonds not only to people but to places. Your home serves the same function that a parent serves for a child: a safe point to return to, a source of comfort during stress, a foundation from which to explore the world. Brain imaging shows that thinking about home activates the same neural regions associated with secure attachment to loved ones. When you feel reluctant to leave home, you're not being immature. You're responding to a fundamental human need for a secure base. Home isn't where you hide from life. It's where you gather the resources needed to engage with life on your own terms. Psychological ownership, the feeling that a space is yours, has measurable effects on well-being. Research on territorial behavior in humans shows that controlling and personalizing your environment reduces your body's tension, enhances mood, and improves cognitive performance. The more control you have over your space, choosing the lighting, temperature, sounds, even the arrangement of objects, the more your nervous system can relax. This explains why working from home often feels less stressful than working in an office, why hotels feel exhausting despite being comfortable, and why even beautiful public spaces can't provide the restoration that your own imperfect apartment does. It's not about luxury or aesthetics. It's about ownership and control. Your space responds to your needs because you've shaped it too. Every choice you've made in personalizing your home is your nervous system trying to create optimal conditions for its own regulation. The objects you choose to surround yourself with aren't just decorations. They're extensions of your identity. Research on behavioral residue shows that people's living spaces contain rich psychological information about personality, values, and emotional needs. The books on your shelf, the art on your walls, the specific arrangement of furniture. These choices reflect and reinforce your sense of self. When you're home, surrounded by things you've chosen, you're literally surrounded by external representations of your internal landscape. This is why being in your own space feels so restorative. You don't have to explain yourself to your environment. You don't have to translate who you are for an audience. Everything around you already speaks your language, reflects your values, understands your aesthetic. You're not being materialistic when you care about your space. You're creating a physical environment that mirrors and supports your psychological reality. Sensory control is one of the most powerful aspects of home as sanctuary. Research on environmental psychology demonstrates that the ability to control lighting, sound, temperature, and even air quality has profound effects on nervous system regulation. Introverts and highly sensitive people show particularly strong responses to sensory control. When you can dim harsh lights, eliminate unwanted sounds, adjust temperature precisely, your body's tension melts, allowing you to finally settle. This is why restaurants with loud music and bright lights feel exhausting. Why open-plan offices create constant, low-level stress. And why your bedroom with blackout curtains and your preferred temperature feels like a different universe. You're not being demanding. You're creating the sensory conditions under which your nervous system can actually relax. Every sensory adjustment you make at home is an act of self-care at the neurological level. Predictability serves a crucial function in nervous system regulation. Research on the nervous system explains that your body constantly scans the environment for safety or threat. Novel environments, even neutral or positive ones, require vigilant monitoring. Familiar environments allow the nervous system to relax that monitoring. At home, you know which floorboards creak, which neighbors make noise at what times, what the light looks like at different hours. This intimate knowledge allows your brain to classify the environment as safe without conscious thought, freeing up mental resources for other things. The predictability of home isn't boring. It's liberating. You're not afraid of novelty. You're conserving energy by not having to constantly assess your environment for potential problems. This is efficiency, not limitation. Territorial behavior in humans has deep evolutionary roots. Research on territoriality across species shows that having a defended, familiar space is associated with reduced stress, better health outcomes, and increased well-being in hundreds of species, including humans. Your attachment to your home territory isn't psychological weakness. It's biological wisdom. Animals with secure territories show lower baseline stress hormones, better immune function, and more effective stress recovery than those without. The same appears true for humans. Your reluctance to leave your home isn't a disorder unless it prevents you from meeting your needs. For most homebodies, it's simply the recognition that you function better, feel calmer, and live more authentically when you have a secure territory to operate from. You're not being provincial. You're honoring an ancient need that every creature shares. Restoration theory, developed by environmental psychologists and updated in recent research, explains why certain environments restore mental energy while others deplete it. According to this research, restorative environments share 4 qualities. They provide a sense of being away from demands. They offer mental space for reflection. They contain sufficient interest to engage attention without effort. And they feel compatible with your inclinations. Home, for introverts, often scores perfectly on all 4 dimensions. It's away from social demands. It allows unlimited reflection time. It contains things you find genuinely interesting. And it's entirely compatible with your natural inclinations. Public spaces, no matter how beautiful or well-designed, often fail on multiple dimensions. They require social monitoring, limit reflection time, and demand constant navigation of others' needs. Your preference for home isn't limited thinking. It's gravitating toward the environment where your mind can actually restore itself. Attention restoration theory specifically addresses how nature and natural elements in living spaces enhance recovery from mental fatigue. Research using brain monitoring shows that even indoor plants, windows with views of trees, or nature sounds can trigger measurable improvements in attention, mood, and stress recovery. The effect is strongest for people who are already mentally fatigued. Exactly the state introverts often find themselves in after social interaction. If your home contains plants, natural light, or views of nature, these aren't just aesthetic choices. They're creating an environment where your depleted attention can regenerate without effort. The wandering attention you experience in natural settings isn't distraction. It's your brain shifting into a recovery mode that's essential for sustained focus. Your houseplants aren't hobbies. They're neurological support systems. Privacy operates on multiple levels, and understanding these levels helps explain why home feels so essential. Theory of privacy regulation describes how people need to control access to themselves at physical, informational, and psychological levels. At home, you control who enters your physical space, what information you reveal, and whether you're even available for interaction. This tri-level control is nearly impossible in public spaces. Even when you're physically alone in a coffee shop, you're informationally accessible to observation and psychologically available for potential interaction. At home, you can lock all three doors simultaneously. The relief you feel isn't antisocial. It's the profound rest that comes when you can finally stop managing access to yourself. Proxemics, the study of personal space, reveals that different people have drastically different space needs. Research shows that introverts maintain larger personal space bubbles than extroverts, not just in crowded situations, but as a baseline preference. At home, you can maintain whatever distance feels comfortable without worrying about offending anyone. You can spread out across a couch, leave space between yourself and others, create physical buffer zones in public. Maintaining your preferred distance often requires constant micro-adjustments that drain energy and create social friction. Your need for space isn't coldness or rejection. It's a legitimate difference in optimal interpersonal distance, as real and valid as differences in optimal room temperature. You're not being distant. You're maintaining the physical boundaries your nervous system requires to feel safe. Embodied cognition research reveals that physical environments shape mental states more powerfully than we realized. Research demonstrates that the brain doesn't maintain a clean separation between thoughts and the physical contexts in which they occur. Specific postures, spaces, and even objects become associated with particular mental states. When you work at the same desk repeatedly, that location becomes primed for work-related thinking. When you relax in the same chair, that space becomes associated with rest. At home, you've created multiple embodied contexts, each supporting different mental states. This is impossible in generic public spaces that hold no personal associations. Your home isn't just containing your life. It's actively structuring your consciousness, providing physical anchors for different aspects of yourself. Each room, each corner, holds accumulated associations, that make accessing particular states of mind easier. Place attachment research shows that emotional bonds to locations serve crucial psychological functions. Your attachment to home isn't regression or fear. It's the activation of a bond that provides continuity of self, connection to personal history, and a sense of rootedness in an often chaotic world. Brain imaging studies show that thinking about a beloved place activates reward centers and deactivates threat detection systems. Your home, if you've been there long enough to form attachment, literally calms your brain at the neurological level. People without strong place attachments show less life satisfaction, more anxiety, and greater difficulty maintaining consistent identity across different contexts. Your love of home isn't limitation. It's an anchor providing stability in a world that often feels fragmentary and overwhelming. Environmental identity theory proposes that places become part of how we define ourselves. Your home isn't just where you live. It's part of who you are, the books you've collected, the colors you've chosen, the specific way you've arranged everything. These choices both reflect and constitute your identity. When someone criticizes your preference for staying home, they're not just criticizing a behavior. They're criticizing a part of your self-concept. This is why such criticism feels so deeply wounding. You're not being oversensitive. Someone is asking you to disconnect from a part of your identity. Research shows that people with strong environmental identity report higher life satisfaction, clearer sense of purpose, and better mental health outcomes. Your identification with your home space isn't weakness or dependency. It's an integration of environment into identity that provides psychological stability and authentic self-expression. Cognitive load theory explains why home feels so mentally restful compared to other environments. Research demonstrates that every novel environment requires working memory resources to navigate, remembering where things are, how systems work, what behaviors are appropriate. At home, this information is stored in long-term memory and accessed automatically, freeing up working memory for other tasks. This is why you can think more clearly at home, why creative insights often arrive in the shower or on your couch, why complex problems sometimes solve themselves when you're doing familiar tasks in familiar spaces. Your working memory isn't cluttered with environmental navigation, leaving room for actual thinking. When you say you think better at home, you're describing a real cognitive phenomenon. Familiar environments literally expand your mental capacity by reducing the overhead cost of simply existing in a space. After understanding all these mechanisms, secure attachment, psychological ownership, sensory control, predictability, territoriality, restoration, privacy, proxemics, embodied cognition, place attachment, environmental identity, and cognitive efficiency, the picture becomes clear. Home isn't where you hide from life. It's where your nervous system can finally operate at optimal efficiency, where your brain can access its full capacity, where your identity can exist without translation or performance. Every system we've explored points to the same truth. For some nervous systems, home provides conditions that simply cannot be replicated elsewhere. You're not avoiding the world. You're creating the foundation from which meaningful engagement with the world becomes possible. You're still here, still listening, perhaps feeling recognized in these words, perhaps feeling less alone in your preferences. Take a gentle breath. Notice how your body feels right now. maybe a little lighter, knowing these patterns have names, have science, have validity. We're exploring what it means to be wired for depth together. You and I and everyone else listening in their own quiet corners. If this understanding brings you peace, perhaps let it ripple outward. A quiet like, subscribe, or share might help another homebody find their way to this same relief. There's no rush, just the slow unfolding of recognition. Let's continue this gentle journey together. The extrovert ideal that Dr. Susan Cain identified has deep cultural roots in Western, particularly American, society. Her research traces how, beginning in the early 20th century, success became increasingly associated with the ability to sell yourself, command attention, and influence others quickly. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, published in 1936, epitomized this shift. Suddenly, being likable in brief encounters mattered more than depth of character or expertise. Schools began prioritizing group work and class participation. Corporations started equating leadership potential with gregariousness. And quietly, a cultural message embedded itself. Extroversion equals success. Introversion equals deficiency. You didn't fail to adapt. You inherited a cultural bias that judges your operating system as inferior when it's simply different. The evolution of workplace design reflects and reinforces this extroverted bias. Research on office culture documents how the rise of open-plan offices in the 1960s, accelerating through the 2000s, was explicitly designed to increase spontaneous collaboration and casual interaction. Goals that benefit extroverts while creating constant overstimulation for introverts. Studies show that open offices reduce productivity, increase stress, and decrease job satisfaction, particularly for introverts. Yet they persist because they reflect cultural values about work, that collaboration is always superior to solitude, that visibility equals productivity, that thinking done alone isn't real work. Every day you've spent in an open office, you've been working against an environment designed for someone else's nervous system. Your exhaustion wasn't personal weakness. It was a reasonable response to environmental hostility. Social media algorithms are specifically designed to trigger FOMO, fear of missing out, and homebodies are particularly vulnerable to this manipulation. Research shows that passive social media consumption, scrolling through others' activities, increases feelings of social isolation and inadequacy, especially in people who already prefer solitude. The algorithm shows you everyone's highlight reel, to parties, gatherings, adventures, creating the illusion that everyone else is constantly socializing while you're home alone. What you don't see, the anxiety before those events, the exhaustion afterward, the staged nature of the photos, or the fact that many of those people wish they could stay home too. The guilt you feel scrolling through Instagram isn't responding to reality. It's responding to a deliberately curated illusion designed to make you feel like you're missing something. You're not missing out. You're being manipulated into thinking you are. Western culture has created a powerful equation. Activity equals worth. Research on worthiness identifies this as one of the most damaging messages in modern society. If you're not constantly doing, achieving, socializing, experiencing, you're wasting your life. This message is everywhere. Productivity apps, motivational posters, self-help books, social media. But it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how different nervous systems create value. Some people create value through action and interaction. Others create value through reflection and integration. A musician creates value during the 2-hour performance, but also during the 20 hours of solitary practice before it. A writer creates value in the published book, but also in the months of invisible thinking that preceded every sentence. Your quiet hours at home aren't wasted time. They're where integration happens, where experiences become understanding, where the raw material of life gets processed into wisdom. Visibility bias creates a distorted picture of what normal human behavior looks like. Research on cognitive biases explains that we overestimate the prevalence of behaviors we can observe and underestimate behaviors that happen in private. Extroverts are visible. They're at the party, the networking event, the group outing. Introverts are home, invisible. This creates the illusion that normal people are constantly social, when in reality, millions of people are home at any given moment, invisible to each other. You see the 10 people at the party, but not the 100 who declined the invitation. You notice the colleague who's always organizing happy hours, but not the 5 who quietly go home. The social world you see is a sample biased toward people who want to be seen. You're not defying the norm by staying home. You're participating in the actual norm that simply isn't visible. The physiology of shame is particularly painful and particularly persistent. Research shows that shame activates the same brain regions as physical pain, triggers stress hormone release, and creates a cascade of negative effects on mental and physical health. When you feel ashamed of preferring to stay home, your body is experiencing actual distress. The shame response makes you want to hide, to shrink, to disappear, which of course reinforces the very isolation that might have triggered the shame in the first place. Breaking this cycle requires understanding that shame is a response to perceived social judgment, not to actual deficiency. You feel shame because you believe you should be different, not because you actually need to be. The shame isn't giving you useful information. It's giving you distorted feedback from a culture that doesn't understand your wiring. You can let it go. It was never yours to carry. The comparison trap is particularly insidious in the age of social media. Social comparison theory, updated by contemporary research, explains that humans have a drive to evaluate themselves by comparing to others. But social media provides an endless stream of upward comparisons. People who seem happier, more social, more adventurous, more everything. What you're comparing is your internal experience, anxiety, fatigue, preference for quiet, to others' external presentations, smiling photos, exciting updates, curated moments. You're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Research shows that this asymmetric comparison is one of the strongest predictors of decreased well-being in the modern era. When you feel inadequate because someone posted photos of a party you didn't attend, you're not responding to reality. You're responding to a fundamentally unfair comparison. Their public performance versus your private truth. Cultural messages about productivity have become deeply internalized, creating what researchers call laziness lies. The belief that rest is laziness, that quiet is wasted time, that staying home is opting out of life. These are cultural constructs, not universal truths. In many non-Western cultures, contemplation is valued. Silence is respected, and the inner life is considered as important as the outer life. The Japanese concept of ma, the space between things, the pregnant pause, is valued as essential to meaning. In many indigenous cultures, time spent in quiet reflection is considered necessary for wisdom. The equation of constant activity with virtue is culturally specific, historically recent, and psychologically damaging. You're not lazy for staying home. You're resisting a toxic cultural message that equates your worth with your visible productivity. The internalization of these messages creates what psychologists call preferences you want but judge yourself for wanting. Research on self-compassion shows that people who judge themselves for their natural inclinations experience significantly more anxiety, persistent worry, and stress than those who accept themselves. Every time you stay home but feel guilty about it, you're in conflict with yourself. Part of you knows you need this. Another part judges you for needing it. This internal division is exhausting and unsustainable. The solution isn't to force yourself to go out more. It's to align your actions with your values and let go of the internalized judgment. You can want what you want without shame. Your preferences don't require justification. They require acceptance. Halfway through this exploration, a pattern emerges clearly. The guilt you feel about staying home isn't coming from inside you. It's absorbed from outside, from a culture that values extroversion over introspection, from social media designed to make you feel inadequate, from workplace structures built for different nervous systems, from productivity myths that equate worth with visibility. The shame isn't yours. You picked it up from an environment that didn't understand you. And you've been carrying it so long you forgot it wasn't originally yours. You can put it down now. Not because you'll suddenly become extroverted, but because you can finally see the guilt for what it is. A borrowed burden, not a legitimate response to who you are. The relief begins here, in recognizing that you don't owe anyone an explanation for being exactly what you've always been. Breathe slowly, and notice what's happening in your body right now. The tightness in your chest, if there was any. Is it loosening the tension in your shoulders? Is it beginning to release? Permit yourself to recognize this moment. You're learning that your preferences aren't problems. You're discovering that what you've judged as weakness might simply be difference. Feel your body settling, like a bird finally touching down after a long migration. Wings folding, breath steadying. You don't have to fly anymore just to prove you can. You can rest. You can stay. You can be still and know that stillness is enough. That you are enough, exactly as you are. Now we continue. The distinction between solitude and loneliness is crucial and often misunderstood. Research provides clear definitions. Solitude is the chosen state of being alone, which is generally associated with positive outcomes, including creativity, self-reflection, and emotional regulation. Loneliness is the painful feeling that arises when your social needs aren't being met, regardless of whether you're physically alone or surrounded by people. You can be lonely in a crowd if the connections are superficial. You can be in solitude at home and feel completely fulfilled if your social needs are being met through quality relationships. The error people make is assuming that being alone equals being lonely. For introverts, the opposite is often true. Being alone is how you maintain the emotional resources necessary to create meaningful connections when you do socialize. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's the opposite. It's the foundation that makes genuine connection possible. The Surgeon General's report on social connection made headlines about an epidemic of loneliness. But the nuance often got lost in translation. The report distinguished clearly between quantity and quality of social connection. Loneliness isn't measured by hours spent socializing, but by whether your relationships provide genuine emotional connection, understanding, and support. The research found that people with 3 close, authentic relationships often report better well-being than those with 30 superficial connections. For introverts, this is validating news. You're not failing at connection because you have a small social circle. You're succeeding at connection by investing deeply in the relationships that matter. The report wasn't calling for more socializing. It was calling for more meaningful connection. These are not the same thing. Friendship patterns differ significantly between introverts and extroverts. Research on friendship across the lifespan shows that introverts typically maintain fewer friendships, but report greater satisfaction with those friendships than extroverts do with their larger networks. Quality over quantity isn't a consolation. It's a different strategy that serves different needs. Introverts invest more time and emotional energy per friendship, creating deeper understanding and more authentic connection. Extroverts spread their social energy across more relationships, creating broader networks with different benefits. Neither pattern is superior. They're complementary approaches to human connection. Your small circle isn't a failure to be more social. It's a deliberate allocation of limited social energy toward maximum depth and authenticity. The depth of connection that introverts create in their relationships has measurable characteristics. Research found that introverts engage in significantly more substantive conversations, discussions of meaningful topics, emotions, ideas, and experiences, compared to extroverts, who engage in more small talk. Brain imaging during conversations shows that introverts experience greater activation in regions associated with empathy and perspective-taking during one-on-one interactions. You're not being intense or too serious in your friendships. Your brain is literally processing the interaction at a deeper level, creating richer understanding and more nuanced connection. The depth you bring to relationships isn't neediness. It's the natural expression of how your brain processes social information. Your friends who appreciate this depth aren't tolerating you. They're benefiting from something many people never experience in their superficial networks. The benefits of solitude have been documented extensively. Research on solitude demonstrates that time alone enhances creativity, improves emotional regulation, increases self-awareness, and promotes authentic self-expression. In experimental studies, participants who spent time in deliberate solitude showed improvements in mood, decreases in stress hormones, and enhanced problem-solving abilities. The key is that the solitude was chosen, not imposed. When you choose to be alone, you're engaging in an activity with measurable benefits, not avoiding something important. Your hours alone aren't empty time. They're full time, rich with internal activity that supports every other area of your life. The value isn't visible, but it's real and measurable. The metaphor of the social battery that introverts use isn't just metaphorical. It has biological basis. Research measured actual changes in stress hormones, heart rate variability, and brain energy utilization during social interaction in introverts versus extroverts. Introverts show greater physiological stress response to sustained social interaction and require longer recovery periods to return to baseline. The battery metaphor captures something real. You have a finite amount of social energy. It depletes with use, and it requires specific conditions to recharge. Typically, solitude, quiet, and familiar environments. When you say my battery is dead, you're describing actual physiological depletion. When you go home to recharge, you're not being antisocial. You're responding to genuine biological need, as real as hunger or thirst. Selective sociality is a strategy, not a deficiency. Research on chosen family reveals that people who are highly selective about relationships, choosing fewer, deeper connections, report equal or greater life satisfaction compared to those with large but shallow networks. The selectivity reflects self-knowledge and clear priorities, not social anxiety or avoidance. When you decline invitations to events that don't align with your interests or energy levels, you're not being difficult. You're practicing discernment. Every no to the wrong thing is a yes to the right thing. Time and energy preserved for connections that actually nourish you. Your selectivity isn't snobbery or social dysfunction. It's the wisdom of knowing what you need and honoring that knowledge. Digital connection has changed the landscape of introvert friendship maintenance. Research on digital communication shows that introverts often prefer text-based communication, messaging, email, over voice or video calls, and maintain satisfying long-distance friendships through these channels. The asynchronous nature of texting allows for the reflection time introverts prefer, reduces the overstimulation of real-time conversation, and permits connection without the energy cost of physical presence. Your preference for texting isn't emotional avoidance. It's choosing a communication channel that allows you to be more thoughtful, more authentic, and more present than real-time conversation might allow. Digital tools haven't made you more isolated. They've given you tools to maintain connection in ways that work for your nervous system. The recharge cycle is predictable and necessary. Research on introversion documents the typical pattern. Social interaction depletes energy. Solitude restores it. Restored energy makes quality connection possible again. Breaking this cycle by forcing constant socializing doesn't make you more social. It keeps you in a state of chronic depletion, where you can't bring your best self to any interaction. Honoring the cycle means better relationships, not fewer. When you do show up, you're actually present, emotionally available, and capable of the depth of connection you value. Your friends don't want the depleted version of you that emerges from forced socializing. They want the restored version that emerges from respected boundaries. The time you spend alone isn't taking you away from your relationships. It's what makes your relationships possible. You're not isolated. Isolation is forced separation from desired connection. What you're doing is selective connection combined with necessary restoration time. Research on loneliness makes this distinction clear. Loneliness is the distress that comes from unmet social needs, while solitude is the fulfillment that comes from meeting internal needs. Most homebodies aren't lonely. They have meaningful relationships, regular contact with loved ones, and a sense of belonging. They just have those things while also maintaining substantial time alone. The error is assuming that if you're not constantly socializing, you must be suffering. Some of the least lonely people spend the most time alone. Your preference for substantial alone time doesn't mean you're disconnected from humanity. It means you're connected to yourself, which is the foundation for genuine connection to others. The capacity for deep work, sustained, focused attention on cognitively demanding tasks, is significantly enhanced by solitude. Research demonstrates that meaningful intellectual work requires blocks of uninterrupted time that are nearly impossible to achieve in social or public environments. The constant micro-interruptions of shared spaces, even polite ones, fragment attention and prevent the deep flow states where complex problems get solved and creative insights emerge. Every major intellectual breakthrough, from Newton's laws to Einstein's relativity to modern innovations in technology and art, emerged from hours of solitary concentration. When you stay home to work, think, or create, you're not avoiding collaboration. You're accessing the conditions necessary for the kind of work that collaboration alone cannot produce. Your solitary hours aren't wasted. They're where the real work happens. Throughout history, the people who produced culture's most enduring works were often people who stayed home. Emily Dickinson wrote nearly 1,800 poems, most of which became famous after her death, while rarely leaving her house in Amherst. Marcel Proust wrote In Search of Lost Time, one of literature's masterpieces, while living in a cork-lined bedroom. Isaac Newton developed calculus and formulated the laws of motion during 2 years of isolation at his family farm. Historical research documents hundreds of similar examples across every field. Writers, scientists, artists, composers, philosophers whose greatest contributions emerged from solitary contemplation. These weren't antisocial hermits. Many had rich relationships and engaged with their communities. But their valuable work happened in solitude. When you stay home to think, create, or simply exist, you're in good company. The introverts who stayed home didn't miss out on life. They created much of what makes life meaningful. Observational intelligence is a specific cognitive style, more common in introverts. Research shows that introverts tend to process social information by observing patterns, noticing details, and forming comprehensive understanding before acting. Extroverts tend toward learning by doing, jumping in and adjusting based on feedback. Neither approach is superior across all contexts. Observation allows for deeper understanding and fewer mistakes. Action allows for faster adaptation and broader experience. Innovation requires both types: the observers who see patterns others miss, and the actors who implement changes quickly. Your tendency to hang back and watch isn't cowardice or social anxiety. It's a cognitive processing style that generates unique insights. The extroverts are busy being in the moment. You're busy understanding the moment. Both are necessary. Both are valuable. Reflective processing creates better decisions in complex situations. Research on thinking styles distinguishes between fast, intuitive thinking and slow, deliberate thinking. Introverts naturally engage in more slow thinking, considering multiple perspectives, running mental simulations, evaluating long-term consequences before deciding. In situations requiring quick response, this can be a liability. In situations requiring wisdom, it's an asset. The decisions you make after careful consideration are often better than the snap judgments others make. Your deliberation isn't overthinking. It's appropriate thinking for complex problems. The world celebrates quick decisions because they're visible and feel decisive. But many of history's best decisions came from people who took time to think carefully in solitude before acting. Your slowness to decide isn't weakness. It's thoroughness. Emotional depth is both a gift and a burden for introverts and highly sensitive people. Research shows that deep processors don't just think more, they feel more. Emotions aren't experienced as simple reactions, but as complex states requiring time to fully understand. A conversation that an extrovert processes in the moment might take an introvert hours or days to fully integrate. This creates richer emotional understanding, more nuanced empathy, and deeper relationships. But it also means carrying emotions longer and feeling them more intensely. When something affects you deeply and you need time alone to process it, you're not being dramatic. Your nervous system is doing the deep emotional work that creates genuine wisdom about human experience. Shallow processors move on quickly. Deep processors understand more completely. Both serve purposes. Your depth isn't excessive feeling. It's complete feeling. Sustained focus is increasingly rare and increasingly valuable in a world of constant distraction. Research on attention spans found that attention is interrupted frequently in typical office environments and every few moments when using digital devices. Introverts working in solitude often report sustained focus periods extending from 90 minutes to several hours, vastly longer than fragmented office attention. This sustained attention allows for complex problem-solving, creative synthesis, and deep learning that fragmented attention cannot achieve. In an economy increasingly driven by knowledge work, the ability to focus for hours is a rare and valuable skill. Your preference for working alone at home isn't antisocial. It's protecting your most valuable cognitive asset from an environment designed to fragment it. Self-sufficiency in emotional regulation is a strength, not a weakness. Research on positive emotions shows that people who can generate positive emotional states through solitary activities, reading, thinking, creating, being in nature, have more stable overall well-being than those who depend entirely on social interaction for positive emotion. You're not emotionally dependent on others for your baseline state. You can create your own contentment, generate your own interest, maintain your own equilibrium. This isn't isolation. It's resilience. It means you engage with others from a place of wholeness rather than neediness, bringing genuine offering rather than desperate seeking. Your comfort with your own company isn't loneliness. It's the foundation of emotional independence that makes healthy relationships possible. Imagination cultivation requires protected time and space. Research on creativity demonstrates that imagination, the ability to create mental scenarios, explore possibilities, and generate novel ideas, requires what researchers call positive constructive daydreaming, which happens primarily in solitude. The constant stimulation of social environments keeps the brain in reactive mode, responding to external input. Solitude allows the brain to shift into generative mode, creating internal content. Every great innovation begins as something someone imagined while alone. Your time spent in your own head isn't wasted. It's where possibility lives, where alternatives get explored, where the future gets invented before it becomes real. The world sees the final product. You live in the invisible generative space where it all begins. Listening ability correlates with introversion. Research on communication styles found that introverts speak less in conversations but retain more of what others say, ask more follow-up questions, and demonstrate greater understanding of others' perspectives. The silence isn't absence of thought, it's presence of attention. While extroverts often process verbally, thinking out loud and developing ideas through speech. Introverts process internally, listening carefully and formulating responses before speaking. This creates different conversational dynamics. Extroverts feel energized by talking. Introverts create space for others to be heard. Both are valuable. Your quiet in conversations isn't weakness or disengagement. It's active, attentive listening that many people rarely experience in their lives. Empathy depth in introverts has been measured neurologically. Brain imaging research shows that introverts display stronger activation in brain regions associated with empathy and emotional processing when viewing images of people in various emotional states. You don't just notice others' emotions. You simulate them internally, partially experiencing what they're feeling. This creates profound understanding, but also means emotional experiences accumulate. After a day of absorbing others' feelings, you need time alone to process and release emotions that aren't yours. Your need for solitude after social interaction isn't coldness. It's necessary clearing of absorbed emotional content. You're not less caring because you need space. You're more affected by others, which is why you need time to separate your feelings from theirs. Authenticity, the alignment between internal experience and external expression, is easier for many introverts to maintain in solitude than in social performance. Research on authenticity shows that people report feeling most authentic in environments where they don't have to manage others' perceptions. At home, you can be completely yourself, expressing emotions without censoring, pursuing interests without judgment, existing without performance. This authentic existence isn't selfishness. It's the foundation of self-knowledge. You have to know who you are alone before you can genuinely share yourself with others. Your time at home isn't hiding your true self. It's discovering and being your true self, which paradoxically makes genuine connection possible when you do engage socially. You can't authentically connect if you don't know what you're connecting from. Boundary clarity, knowing your limits and communicating them, is both a strength and a necessity for introverts. Research on boundaries demonstrates that people with clear boundaries report better mental health, more satisfying relationships, and less resentment than those with porous boundaries. Your ability to say, "I need to go home now," or "I can't do that this week," isn't rudeness. It's self-knowledge and self-advocacy. Respecting your own limits prevents the resentment that builds when you consistently override them. The people who respect your boundaries are the ones worth having in your life. The people who pressure you to ignore them are teaching you they don't respect your needs. Your boundaries aren't walls. They're the outline of your authentic self, and anyone who matters will honor them. Contentment capacity, the ability to be satisfied with present experience without constant external stimulation, is a profound gift. Happiness research shows that people who can generate contentment from simple, solitary pleasures report more stable well-being than those who require constant novelty and stimulation. The happiness that depends on external events is fragile and fleeting. The contentment you generate from reading a book in your favorite chair, watching rain from your window, or simply existing in peaceful space is sustainable and renewable. You're not missing out on experiences by staying home. You're accessing an entire category of experience. The pleasure of simply being, that people addicted to stimulation can't access. Your capacity for contentment isn't settling. It's wisdom about where sustainable satisfaction actually lives. Wisdom development requires reflection time, that solitude uniquely provides. Research on wisdom identifies three components: cognitive understanding of life deeply, reflective examining from multiple perspectives, and effective, compassionate understanding. All three components are enhanced by solitary reflection. You can't deeply understand life while constantly reacting to it. You can't examine multiple perspectives while immersed in one. You can't develop compassionate understanding without time to process your own experience. The wise people across cultures and throughout history shared one practice: regular solitude for reflection. When you stay home to think, process, and integrate experience, you're not wasting time. You're developing wisdom that benefits everyone you eventually share it with. Your quiet hours alone are where understanding deepens into wisdom, the gift you give to others through your depth, attention, and authenticity is real and valuable. Research on conversation documents how rare genuine attention has become in a distracted world. When you do engage socially, you bring presence, depth of listening, authentic response, and emotional attunement that many people rarely experience. Your small circle receives something precious: real connection, genuine understanding, and consistent presence. The breadth of an extrovert's network serves different purposes: connection, diversity, social energy, wide information access. The depth of your few connections serves other purposes: emotional safety, genuine understanding, authentic intimacy. The world needs both. Your contribution isn't less because it's given to fewer people. It's different because it goes deeper, and those who receive it know exactly how valuable it is. Welcome yourself to drift deeper now, feeling the way exhaustion has perhaps been softening your edges. You might be feeling tired. That's more than fine. That's the point. Breathe slowly and notice the rhythm, the way the world turns, the way thoughts rise and fall, the way your own being cycles between engagement and rest. You are part of these eternal rhythms, not separate from them. The moon pulls the tides without effort. The seasons change without strain. You too can move through cycles of connection and solitude, activity and rest, without forcing, without judgment. Just this gentle breathing, just this peaceful allowing. Invite everything to be exactly as it is, including you. We're almost there now. Career alignment makes an enormous difference in daily well-being. Research on work orientation shows that introverts in careers allowing autonomy, depth work, and minimal forced social performance report significantly higher job satisfaction and lower burnout than those in roles requiring constant interaction. Remote work, creative fields, research positions, technical roles, writing, editing, independent consulting. These aren't escape careers. They're alignments between work demands and nervous system capacity. If your work allows you to largely work from home, engage deeply with ideas or systems rather than people, and minimize performance demands, you haven't failed at traditional career paths. You've succeeded at building work around your actual strengths. Relationship honesty about your needs prevents years of accumulated resentment. Relationship research shows that successful long-term relationships require partners to understand and respect each other's fundamental needs. If you're an introvert with an extroverted partner, the relationship works when both understand that your need for alone time isn't rejection And their need for social time isn't abandonment. Honest negotiation. I need 3 evenings alone this week, matched with I need to see friends twice this week. Creates sustainability. Pretending you don't need what you need, or resenting your partner for needing something different, creates slow decay. The people who love you deserve to know your truth. And you deserve to be loved for who you actually are. Friendship curation becomes easier with age and self-knowledge. Research on socio-emotional selectivity shows that as people age, they naturally become more selective about relationships, investing in fewer but more meaningful connections. This isn't decline, it's optimization. You have limited social energy. Investing it in relationships that genuinely nourish you rather than relationships maintained from obligation or habit isn't selfish. It's wise. The friends who've remained in your life through years of your being exactly yourself, needing space, canceling plans sometimes, preferring deep conversation to small talk. Those are your people. The ones who drifted away when you stopped performing extroversion weren't wrong. They just needed someone different. Schedule design that protects alone time is essential self-care, not selfishness. Research on time management demonstrates that intentionally scheduling solitude increases productivity, creativity, and well-being. If you block off evenings or weekends for alone time with the same commitment you'd block off time for work or family obligations, you're not being rigid. You're honoring a genuine need. The people who understand will respect the boundary. The people who don't understand aren't necessarily bad people. They just have different needs. But your schedule doesn't exist to accommodate everyone else's social desires. It exists to support your actual functioning. Energy budgeting requires knowing your limits and planning accordingly. Research on willpower and energy shows that people have finite decision-making capacity and finite social energy. Introverts who track their energy levels, noticing what depletes and restores them, can plan their weeks to prevent the crashes that come from overcommitment. If you know a work conference will drain you, you can protect the following weekend for recovery. If you know Sunday evenings at home restore you for the week ahead, you can prioritize that over social invitations. This isn't being calculating. It's being realistic about how your nervous system works. Boundary communication improves with practice and becomes easier over time. Research on boundaries provides specific language for introverts. I need some alone time to recharge is clear and non-negotiable. I'd love to see you, but I can only do an hour sets clear limits. I'm not available this week. But let's plan for next month, maintains connection while protecting needs. Early attempts at boundary setting might feel awkward or guilty. With repetition, they become natural. The key is framing boundaries as information about your needs, not judgments about others' requests. Most people appreciate honesty far more than fake enthusiasm followed by resentful withdrawal. Space optimization, creating sanctuary in whatever home you have, doesn't require luxury or space. Environmental psychology research shows that even small interventions dramatically improve how restorative a space feels. Control over lighting through lamps and dimmer switches, reduction of visual clutter that creates low-level stress, incorporation of natural elements like plants or nature views, creation of distinct zones for different activities so your brain can associate specific locations with specific states. Personalization through objects that reflect your identity and values. You don't need a mansion to create sanctuary. You need intentionality about the space you have. Ritual development. consistent practices that mark transitions and create structure, serves important psychological functions. Research on rituals shows that personal rituals reduce anxiety, increase enjoyment, and create a sense of control and meaning. If you have a morning routine that eases you into the day, an evening routine that helps you wind down, or weekend rituals that restore your energy, these aren't rigidity. They're scaffolding. The rituals create predictability in an unpredictable world, conserve decision-making energy, and mark the boundaries between different states. Your morning coffee in the same chair while watching light change isn't boring. It's an anchor. Your Friday night ritual of being absolutely alone isn't antisocial. It's necessary transition from work mode to rest mode. Self-knowledge deepening is the work of a lifetime and primarily happens in solitude. Research on self-awareness shows that people who regularly engage in structured self-reflection, journaling, meditation, contemplative walks, demonstrate greater emotional intelligence, better decision-making, and more authentic relationships. The time you spend alone thinking about your experiences, your reactions, your patterns, your growth isn't navel-gazing. It's the essential work of becoming yourself. You can't know yourself in constant motion and interaction. You have to stop, look inward, and pay attention. The insights that emerge from this reflection inform every other area of life. Living authentically, when your external life matches your internal reality, creates profound peace. Research on personal projects shows that people experience the greatest well-being when their daily activities align with their core personality traits and values. When your job allows you to work in ways that suit your temperament, when your relationships honor your needs, when your schedule protects your energy, when your home provides genuine restoration, this alignment creates a life that feels right from the inside. You're not forcing yourself to fit a template designed for someone else. You're building a life around the reality of who you actually are. This isn't settling or giving up on growth. It's the deepest form of growth, becoming more fully yourself. Evolution required diversity of temperament for human groups to survive. Research on evolutionary psychology demonstrates that groups containing both bold explorers and cautious observers outperformed homogeneous groups in simulated and real-world scenarios. The explorers found new resources but also led groups into danger. The cautious observers prevented disasters but missed opportunities. Together, they created balanced decision-making that maximized both innovation and safety. Your introversion isn't a personal quirk. It's an evolutionary strategy that groups needed to survive. The world requires people who rush forward and people who hang back and think. Both types are necessary. Neither is superior. The observer role in groups has specific value that action-oriented people cannot provide. Research on social cognition shows that observers notice patterns, dynamics, and subtle shifts that participants immersed in action miss entirely. Every group needs someone watching the whole picture, while others focus on their specific parts. Introverts often naturally occupy this role, noticing when group dynamics become toxic, when someone is being excluded, when the stated goal no longer matches the actual activity. Your position at the edge of social groups isn't failure to integrate. It's a vantage point that provides perspective unavailable from the center. Cultural balance requires both contemplatives and activists. Research documents how societies that value both action and reflection, both doing and being, both external achievement and internal development create more sustainable cultures. Western industrial society has overvalued action and undervalued reflection, creating a culture of constant motion with insufficient wisdom. The correction requires people willing to prioritize depth over speed, being over doing, internal life over external performance. Every hour you spend in quiet contemplation is a small act of resistance against a culture demanding constant productivity. Historical contributions from homebodies shape civilization. Research on solitude and creativity documents how Emily Dickinson created poetry that still shapes literature while rarely leaving her home. Isaac Newton revolutionized physics and mathematics during isolation. Gregor Mendel discovered genetics while quietly working in a monastery garden. Charles Darwin developed evolution theory through decades of solitary observation and thinking. Franz Kafka wrote transformative literature while living quietly with his family. These weren't social failures compensating through work. They were people whose temperaments suited them for deep, solitary engagement with ideas. Depth creators, people who produce work requiring sustained attention and deep processing, often work in solitude. Research on flow and creativity shows that breakthrough work in art, science, and literature overwhelmingly happens during long periods of uninterrupted solitude. The shallow work of communication, coordination, and maintenance can happen in social settings. The deep work of actual creation, writing the book, solving the equation, composing the symphony, formulating the theory, requires protected time alone. Every major contribution to human knowledge or culture began with someone sitting alone, thinking deeply, working persistently without audience or interruption. The witness role that introverts often occupy serves essential cultural functions. Research on trauma identifies the importance of witnesses, people who observe, remember, and testify to what happened. In personal relationships, in communities, in history itself, someone has to observe and remember. Introverts, standing slightly apart, often serve this function. You notice what others overlook. You remember what others forget. You speak what others miss. Writers, historians, documentarians, archivists. Many are introverts who care about preserving what would otherwise be lost. Emotional processing depth means you feel what others rush past. Research on emotions shows that emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish and understand subtle emotional states, correlates with better mental health and emotional regulation. Introverts and highly sensitive people often possess high emotional granularity, experiencing and naming emotions with precision that others don't access. When something happens, extroverts might feel bad and move on. You feel the specific texture of that bad, the particular blend of disappointment, shame, frustration, and hurt. This takes longer to process, but creates deeper understanding. Meaning makers transform experience into understanding through reflection. Research on finding meaning emphasizes that meaning doesn't come from experience itself, but from reflection on experience. The same event happens to many people. The person who sits with it, thinks about it, examines it from multiple angles, and integrates it into their understanding of life creates meaning that others miss. Your hours of solitary reflection aren't rumination. They're meaning-making. You're taking the raw material of experience and transforming it into understanding, wisdom, and eventually contribution. Your inheritance includes an ancient lineage of contemplatives, monks, philosophers, mystics, thinkers, observers, witnesses, creators who chose or needed solitude to do their work. Across every culture and throughout history, a minority of humans withdrew from constant social engagement to think, pray, create, or simply be. They weren't failures at normal life. They were people whose contributions required different conditions. Desert fathers and mothers in early Christianity, Zen monks in Buddhist tradition, Sufi mystics in Islam, transcendentalist writers in America, existentialist philosophers in Europe, scientists in laboratories, writers in cottages, composers in studios. Necessary quietness in a loud world is not withdrawal. It's essential balance. Research on stillness argues that the accelerating pace and increasing noise of modern life makes quiet people more necessary than ever. Someone has to preserve the ability to think slowly, feel deeply, and be still. Someone has to resist the constant demand for reaction, opinion, and performance. Someone has to remember that not everything requires immediate response, that some things need time to understand, that silence is a valid form of presence. When you insist on quiet time in a culture demanding constant engagement, you're providing essential counterbalance. The search ends here. You've spent perhaps years looking for permission to be exactly what you've always been, searching for someone to tell you your preferences are okay, your needs legitimate, your way of being acceptable. But the permission was never theirs to give. It was always yours to claim. You don't need another study, another test, another reassurance. You just need to see yourself clearly and recognize you've been this way from the beginning. The search can end now. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Not your family who doesn't understand why you're not more social. Not your colleagues who wonder why you don't join happy hours. Not the friends who've drifted away. Not society, which keeps insisting you should want what you don't want. The life you're building, whatever it looks like from the outside, is yours to build. If it's small and quiet and mostly happens in familiar spaces, that life is as valid as any other. No more proving, no more justifying. The walls around you aren't your prison. They are gentle arms holding you while the world spins its demanding chaos outside. Inside these walls, you can lower every defense, exist without performance, without explanation, without constant calibration. These walls aren't keeping you from life. They're protecting the life you're actually living. Your home isn't where you hide from your authentic self. It's where your authentic self finally gets to exist without apology. Belonging means recognizing that you carry your sanctuary with you. The peace you feel at home lives inside you. The walls help. The familiar spaces ground you. But the actual sanctuary is your own nervous system finally allowed to regulate without interference. You could be anywhere. And if you're alone, quiet, free from demand, you can find that same peace. You're learning to be at home in yourself. This is why solitude feels like coming home. You're returning to yourself. You're not hiding from life by staying home. You're living it deeply, quietly, truly, while others measure life in experiences collected. You measure it in understanding developed, ideas explored, emotions fully felt, quiet moments completely inhabited. You've chosen depth over breadth, being over doing, internal richness over external adventure, the quiet path, the contemplative way, the inward journey. And at the end, you won't regret the parties you didn't attend. You'll know that you lived the only life available to you, lived with integrity in the only way that ever truly felt like home. And so, our quiet journey through the psychology of homebodies comes to a gentle close. We've traveled from the neuroscience of different brains needing different things, to the cultural pressure that made you question yourself, to the recognition that your way of being is as valid as any other. From the dopamine pathways that require less stimulation, to the walls that hold you safely, to the final understanding that you were never broken, just different. We've glimpsed how introversion is both biological reality and cultural rebellion, how staying home is both personal need and quiet resistance to a world demanding constant performance. People who love staying home remind us that life's meaning isn't measured in experiences collected, but in presence cultivated. Much of the wisdom that guides humanity emerged in silence, in solitude, in the protected space where deep thinking becomes possible. Your preference for home demonstrates a truth the busy world forgets: that stillness isn't absence, but presence. That quiet isn't empty, but full. That being alone isn't loneliness, but completion. Without people who choose depth over breadth, who value being over doing, who protect the quiet necessary for reflection, the world would have no wisdom, only motion. By honoring your need for solitude, you preserve something essential that constant activity destroys. Take the deepest breath you can. Feel how everything you've learned tonight settles into your body like warm blankets layering one by one. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're finally, completely, peacefully home. Permit your entire being to dissolve into this knowing. Like water finding its level, like breath flowing without effort. You are home. You are whole. Nothing left to prove. If this gentle journey helped you feel less alone in your quiet preferences, perhaps share it softly with someone else who might need to hear these words. A gentle like or subscribe could help another homebody discover this understanding. It might be exactly what another searching soul needs to finally stop apologizing for being themselves. One quiet tap, one peaceful recognition at a time. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight through territories of self-understanding that many people never explore. You can allow these thoughts about introversion, about home, about being exactly who you are. You can let them fade now, like morning mist disappearing as sun rises, leaving only the warm certainty behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if the earth itself is gently pulling you closer, gravity becoming an embrace rather than a force. If sleep comes, let it carry you like a familiar river flowing toward the sea, smoothly, inevitably, into a realm where all questions dissolve and only peace remains. If your eyes are still open, another video waits for you, ready to continue this journey. But if they've closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that finally feels safe, in the quiet that finally feels full, in the solitude that finally feels like home. Tomorrow, your preferences will still be valid. Your needs will still be legitimate. Your small, quiet, deeply lived life will still be exactly right. But tonight belongs to rest. Rest well, quiet soul. And remember, the world doesn't need you to be louder, bigger, more social, more visible. The world needs you exactly as you are, deep where others are shallow, still where others are restless, home where others are scattered. Your staying home isn't missing life, it's living it truly. Dream deeper with bedtime science. Fall asleep to gentle facts, where psychology meets sleep. Relax, listen, and drift into peace. Good night.